Welcome to Congress in Context, your shortcut to understanding the pulse of Capitol Hill. Today is September 16th, 2025, and we're taking a real deep dive into the legislative whirlwind of this past week. We're pulling out the most important nuggets, trying to help you understand not just what happened, but really why it matters to you.
Yeah, we've got a fascinating stack of sources here from the Congressional Record. We'll be highlighting key legislative actions, some pretty contentious debates, and moments that, reveal the ongoing dynamics in the House and Senate. Our mission really is to cut through the noise, give you the essential insights, and maybe even some surprising facts along the way.
Exactly. Think of it as a way to be truly well-informed without getting, bogged down in endless details. We'll explore major bills that found surprising consensus, some truly contentious debates that illustrate the deep divides, and even some powerful moments of remembrance and unity. Okay, let's unpack this. First up, the House of Representatives. They've been particularly busy passing a significant number of bills under what's called suspension of the rules. Now, for those maybe not familiar, this process is generally used for measures that have broad support, often bipartisan, letting them move quickly. So what's striking about the range of issues they covered this week?
Well, what's fascinating here is just the sheer breadth of topics. It really shows how Congress tackles the diverse needs of American life. We saw everything from crucial extensions for our innovation economy to deep commitments to veterans, critical infrastructure, all moving forward with pretty clear bipartisan backing.
Okay, let's start with a big one. This is for our innovators, our small business owners. H.R. 5100, extending the Small Business Innovation Research, that's SBIR, and Small Business Technology Transfer, STTR, programs. This passed. These are often called America's Seed Fund, right? Providing that early stage funding for groundbreaking tech, things that drive the economy and help national defense. Why was this so urgent?
It's critical because these programs, which invest billions, they were actually set to expire on September 30th. That's just, 15 days from now? And our sources highlighted some underlying concerns, too, things like protecting these investments from potential theft and abuse by our adversaries, such as the Chinese Communist Party, and also a desire, I think, to avoid the sort of chaotic reauthorization process we saw back in 2022. So this extension, it provides much-needed stability.
Okay, stability there. Now, beyond critical economic support, Congress also found a moment for, unifying national pride this week. The House concurred in the Senate amendment to H.R. 452, the Miracle on Ice Congressional Gold Medal Act. What's the story here? It's more than just a hockey game, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This bill awards congressional gold medals to that legendary 1980 U.S. Olympic men's ice hockey team. And members noted it was far more than just a game. It was seen as a, quote, symbolic victory for democracy, resilience, and national pride, right at the height of the Cold War. Representative Sauber, who sponsored it, he movingly recounted Captain Mike Eruzione saying, "That hockey game gave me life."
Wow.
Yeah. Its strong bipartisan support really underscores its enduring cultural significance, reminds us of those moments of collective triumph.
Definitely. Okay, now, a significant chunk of the House's work this week really zeroed in on veteran support. There were quite a few bills. Instead of just listing every single one, maybe let's group them thematically, get a better handle on the priorities. What key areas did Congress focus on for our service members and their families?
Right. This week really showed Congress kind of pivoting towards these granular, targeted solutions for veterans. I mean, covering everything from combating housing fraud to leveraging AI for claims processing. We saw strong bipartisan support really coalesce around three main areas: improving healthcare access, enhancing economic opportunities, and, interestingly, ensuring historical justice.
Okay, let's break those down. What did we see on healthcare access and maybe modernizing the VA?
Well, on healthcare, Congress addressed some long-standing challenges. For instance, H.R. 1107, the Protecting Veteran Access to Telemedicine Services Act of 2025, that passed to make sure veterans, especially those in rural or remote areas, have uninterrupted access to crucial care. That includes controlled medications, all via telemedicine.
That's huge for access.
It is. And then there's H.R. 3400, the Territorial Response and Access to Veterans Essential Life Care Act. They call it the Travel Act of 2025. This authorizes the VA to temporarily deploy medical specialists to U.S. territories, places like Guam, the Virgin Islands, where veterans often face traveling, thousands of miles for basic care. It's literally bridging geographical gaps.
Wow.
And also, H.R. 1860, the Women Veterans Cancer Care Coordination Act. This establishes specific coordinators within the VA to improve breast and gynecologic cancer care. That care can be particularly complex when veterans also use community providers, so this focuses on coordination.
And what about the economic opportunity side and program integrity?
Yeah, so here we saw efforts to both streamline things and protect them. H.R. 2034, the Edith Norris Rogers STEM Scholarship Opportunity Act. This aims to make it easier for veterans to pursue STEM degrees by lowering credit hour requirements, sort of acknowledging the demands on transitioning service members.
Makes sense.
Then there's H.R. 3579, the Veterans Readiness and Employment Program Integrity Act. This is designed to modernize the VA's VR&E program and address, quote, disastrous wait times, fraud, waste, and abuse, trying to get greater transparency and expand real economic opportunities.
Okay. And you mentioned technology.
Right. Congress is pushing the VA to embrace tech with H.R. 3854, the Modernizing All Veterans and Survivors Claims Processing Act. It requires the VA to develop automation tools, maybe leveraging AI to streamline claims processing. That could be a huge step for efficiency, dealing with backlogs.
Absolutely. And finally, you mentioned historical justice. What significant action did Congress take there?
Yeah, this was a deeply moving and powerful bipartisan move. H.R. 2701, establishing the Fallen Service Members Religious Heritage Restoration Program, that passed. This program aims to identify and correct misburials of American Jewish service members in U.S. military cemeteries overseas. Apparently, an estimated 600 from World War II were improperly buried under Latin crosses. This is about righting those historical wrongs, ensuring religious heritage is respected, even decades later.
That's quite profound. It's clear that, while headlines often focus on division, Congress can still come together on issues directly impacting service members.
Okay, moving beyond veterans, we also saw H.R. 3427, the Water Resources Technical Assistance Review Act. What's the core of that bill? Why is it important for communities?
So this one directs the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, to study how the EPA identifies and partners with technical assistance providers for clean water infrastructure. It's especially focused on economically distressed rural and tribal communities. Basically, it's about ensuring these communities get the specialized help they need to navigate the, frankly, complex process of securing critical funding for vital water projects.
Got it. And in another area of, government efficiency, H.R. 3426, the Courthouse Affordability and Space Efficiency Act, the CASE Act that passed too, what problem is it trying to solve? Well, the GAO previously found that federal courthouses built between 2000 and 2010 were significantly overbuilt. We're talking about 3.56 million square feet. That cost taxpayers hundreds of millions extra in construction and, annual maintenance. This bill aims to stop that kind of waste. It codifies courtroom sharing policies, making sure existing spaces are fully utilized before new construction is even considered. It's a direct response to a clearly identified inefficiency.
Okay, so that covers a lot of the consensus areas in the House, but while that broad agreement was clear, the past week on Capitol Hill was also really defined by deep political chasms, particularly over in the Senate. Let's shift gears now to some of the more contentious political dynamics, starting with the highly charged confirmation of Stephen Mirren to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. What were the key procedural hurdles and the underlying concerns there?
Yeah, that was indeed a truly contentious process. The vote was razor thin. 51-44 just on the motion to proceed, which was the vote to even start debating it. Then 50-44 on cloture. That's the vote to end debate and force a final vote.
Yeah.
And finally, the confirmation itself passed just 48-47.
Wow, 48-47.
Yeah. These close votes really highlight the deep divisions. They weren't just votes on the individual, but clear signals of deep partisan resistance, even to the process itself.
That is remarkably close. What does a confirmation this divisive say about the future of institutions like the Fed, especially with those concerns about Mirren's independence being raised?
Well, it raises a critical question, doesn't it, about the perceived impartiality of institutions like the Fed. Critics, notably Senator Warren, voiced significant concerns about Mirren's independence from President Trump, especially since he apparently intends to remain on leave from his White House role as chief economic advisor while serving on the Fed board. She called this an, quote, unprecedented and unacceptable conflict of interest. Senator Warren also pointed to his past support for President Trump's tariffs, arguing they, quote, stoked inflation and led to higher costs for American families, groceries, housing, everything.
And what was the counter-argument from his supporters? How did they frame it?
Well, on the other side, supporters like Senator Moreno and Senator Marshall, they lauded Mirren as a conservative leader. They emphasized his qualifications, his perspective. And their comments came within this broader context of some highly emotional discussions happening on the Senate floor, particularly around the recent passing of Charlie Kirk. Senator Moreno, for instance, mentioned how certain political rhetoric, like comparing political figures to historical dictators, creates a, quote, bat signal to crazy people and inhibits respectful debate.
So it seems Marin's confirmation wasn't the only deeply partisan discussion kind of influencing the atmosphere. The Senate floor was also a place of, well, high emotion this week. Tributes to figures like Charlie Kirk influencing the broader political rhetoric, underscoring those ideological trenches we often see. What did members say about him?
Absolutely. Several members paid tribute, really highlighting his significant influence. Representative Wilson described Kirk as a, quote, martyr for freedom, while Senator Marshall honored him as a, quote, visionary conservative leader whose unyielding passion for freedom and faith ignited millions. Senator Marshall specifically urged listeners not to let anger turn into hate, but to, quote, channel your emotions into fighting with renewed vigor for the Republic. These statements, they really underscore the deep ideological divides framing these debates.
Right. And another significant partisan fight unfolded over the potential government shutdown. We hear about this threat often, but what were the specific accusations and counter-accusations flying around this week?
Well, the Republican leader accused Democrats of holding a continuing resolution, or CR, that's the temporary funding bill to keep the government open, holding it hostage over, quote, extraneous policy measures. He suggested a shutdown could impact critical services, things like VA offices, nutrition programs, disaster aid, basic government functions. The Democrat leader pushed back hard, argued that Republicans must, quote, work with Democrats in a bipartisan way for a clean expansion.
Yeah.
And he directly blamed President Trump's influence for putting the country on a path to a shutdown. It's really a classic example of the appropriations battle heating up, and it directly impacts the government services you rely on.
Okay. We also heard a very critical address from Senator Durbin regarding what he termed a crisis at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, specifically under Director Kash Patel. What were his specific accusations there?
Senator Durbin's accusations against Director Patel painted a pretty stark picture. He claimed an FBI deliberately weakened, with senior experienced officials purged. Not for incompetence, Durbin alleged, but for, quote, political retribution. He stated Patel's actions amounted to an unprecedented and forced removal of dozens of senior FBI officials. He argued this led to a brain drain and a hollowed-out agency. Durbin expressed deep concern this diminishes the FBI's capacity to respond to threats, terrorism, espionage, cyber attacks, prioritizing, in his words, political retribution and social media clout over national security.
And he linked it further.
Yes, he explicitly linked it to the January 6th insurrection and President Trump's stated desire for retribution against the FBI. Serious charges.
Very serious. Okay, moving to other specific policy discussions we heard on the floor. There were various calls to action. In terms of supporting the arts, one member noted bipartisan support for H.R. 2485, the Arts Education for All bill, highlighting benefits for academics, creativity, even healing. And on a, well, deeply critical foreign policy note, another member called out previous administration's handling of Russia and Ukraine. What specific actions were they pushing for?
Yeah, they were urging immediate, decisive action. Things like stopping Russian oil and gas imports, strengthening sanctions, and passing Congressman Zach Nunn's Bipartisan Peace Act to, quote, kneecap Russia's energy revenues. It reflects ongoing frustration with the pace of the response to that conflict.
Got it. And in other notable floor moments, Representative Larson spoke passionately about gun violence prevention, right? Citing the Sandy Hook anniversary.
Yes. He called for universal background checks and a ban on assault weapons. And he also raised a really urgent issue about a potential Social Security data breach involving what he called DOGE individuals. He was demanding answers about vulnerable personal information possibly stored in an inaccessible cloud. Shows how members use floor time for diverse critical concerns.
Indeed. And Representative Joyce, he highlighted President Trump's executive actions on prescription drugs.
That's right. Specifically actions to address misleading prescription drug advertisements, aiming for greater transparency on drug risks and preventing the promotion of drug usage over lifestyle changes. He also praised the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, which he supported last week. He framed it as implementing President Trump's peace through strength agenda by restoring military lethality and ending, quote, left-wing ideologies and wokeism in the military. These statements really illustrate those ideological battle lines.
Okay. Finally, there were also moments of powerful remembrance this week. The Congressional Black Caucus held a special order hour commemorating the 62nd anniversary of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama. A truly terrible anniversary, killing 4 young girls. What was the significance of this commemoration for today's legislative context? Why bring it up now?
Well, Representatives McClellan, Figures, and Sewell spoke powerfully about the delayed justice for the victims. It took nearly 40 years for all perpetrators to be convicted. But they also framed that tragic event as a, quote, galvanizing force for progress that ultimately led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
And the connection to today.
What makes it particularly relevant now is their warning that the Voting Rights Act is currently, quote, in jeopardy. They specifically cited the Supreme Court's Shelby v. Holder decision. That decision effectively dismantled a core part of the VRA by eliminating federal preclearance for voting law changes in states with a history of discrimination. They emphasized the need for Congress to act now to protect voting rights. And they urged remembering the sacrifices of those who marched, who bled, who prayed, connecting it directly to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s message of loving your enemies and building a beloved community.
A very powerful connection. And in another, perhaps more diplomatic moment, several members used the occasion of Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew's visit to the U.S. to honor his work.
Yes, he's the spiritual leader of over 300 million Orthodox Christians worldwide. Members highlighted his work as a bridge builder and patriarch of peace. They praised his advocacy for religious freedom, environmental stewardship, interfaith dialogue, and his firm stance on Ukraine sovereignty. They also significantly spoke about the persecution of Christians in Turkey, mentioning the reduction of their population, the non-recognition of its jurisdiction, the continued closure of the Halki Theological School. They urged the U.S. to insist on eliminating that discrimination.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Legislative successes, intense partisan clashes, powerful commemorations. What does this whole mosaic really reveal about Congress this week? What's the bigger picture?
You know, what this week truly underscores, especially for you listening, is this increasing divergence we're seeing. On one hand, areas where Congress can still find practical, bipartisan solutions, often on issues with direct, tangible impacts like veteran care or, critical program extensions. But then on the other hand, you have these high-stakes, deeply ideological battles being fought over institutional appointments like Miran, government funding, and even the very structure of our democratic processes like voting rights. And in those areas, compromise seems almost impossible right now.
That's a really interesting way to put it. A contrast between pragmatic governance and, well, political warfare. How do historical events and contemporary rhetoric kind of play into that dynamic?
Well, the discussions around Charlie Kirk's passing and the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing commemoration, they really reveal how deeply history and current political talk resonate in the halls of power. These aren't just isolated discussions, right? They actively shape legislative priorities. They shape calls for a more unified national dialogue. Or, sometimes, unfortunately, they lead to further entrenchment of divisions. You saw that contrast, didn't you? Dr. King's powerful messages of love and reconciliation being invoked right alongside stark warnings about voting rights being in jeopardy.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a more pragmatic level, we saw Congress grappling with technology's future role, leveraging AI in VA claims, but also concerns about Social Security data breaches. Seems they're actively engaged with the cutting edge, for better or worse.
Absolutely. The push for AI in VA claims, the ongoing debate over energy policy. It shows Congress grappling with how tech and environmental concerns will shape our future. And that touches everything from government efficiency, maybe your wait time for a VA claim, to your utility bills, your overall well-being. It's a testament to the constantly evolving challenges lawmakers have to face.
Okay, so looking ahead then, what are the key developments we should be watching out for based on this past week?
Well, first, the fate of those SBIR and STTR programs. That deadline, September 30th, is approaching fast, so that needs resolution very soon.
Right.
And we're definitely anticipating more intense debates on government funding. Keep an eye out for roll call votes expected tomorrow, one on a motion to proceed to SJ Res 60 around 2:30 p.m., and another on Senator Paul's budget resolution around 5:30 p.m. These votes could really determine the short-term stability of government operations, so they're critical to watch.
Okay, funding votes tomorrow. And committees are staying busy too, right? What hearings are coming up?
Yeah, several key ones signal priorities. The Senate Judiciary Committee is set to question FBI Director Kash Patel tomorrow, September 16th. Focus will be on his management, the agency's capacity, likely picking up on Senator Durbin's concerns.
That'll be interesting.
Definitely. Then the House Financial Services Committee has two hearings on September 18th, one on fraud and focus, exposing financial threats to American families, and another on unlocking the next generation of AI in the U.S. financial system.
AI again.
Right. And the House Education and Workforce Committee has a markup that's where they debate and amend bills on September 17th, including the Tribal Labor Sovereignty Act. And Senate Foreign Relations is considering ambassador nominations, too. So these upcoming events really underscore the ongoing work Congress does in oversight, appropriations, tackling diverse policy challenges from economic stability to national security, judicial nominations, and, of course, the future voting rights, as highlighted by the Congressional Black Caucus. That remains a critical, evolving area to monitor closely, both in the courts and on Capitol Hill.
Okay. This deep dive really reveals just how much is happening in Congress that directly affects your life, doesn't it? Being informed is the crucial first step, and fortunately, there are many ways for you to stay engaged and, importantly, make your voice heard.
Absolutely. You can easily find and read the bills we discussed today, like H.R. 5100, the SBIR extension, or H.R. 452, the miracle on ice metal. You can track their progress on congress.gov. It's a free, comprehensive public resource for all legislative activity. Makes it pretty simple to follow what's actually happening with these bills.
And if a particular bill or issue really resonates with you, maybe one of those veterans bills or the voting rights issue, reaching out to your representatives is crucial. You can find their contact information easily through the official House and Senate websites. Don't underestimate the power of your voice. Their offices genuinely track constituent input.
Yeah, they do. And beyond specific legislation, think about how you can participate in democracy more broadly. This week, we heard about Celebrate Community Week, that's September 14-20, and Patriot Week, September 11-17, both recognized by Senate resolutions. These initiatives encourage engagement right at the local level. And the stories we heard about, like advocates like Kathy Otell pushing for cancer detection or the ongoing fight for civil rights, they show that civic participation really extends far beyond just casting a vote.
That's a great point. Maybe think about the big questions raised in Congress this week. How can we bridge these deep partisan divides? What is the right role for technology like AI in government? How do we ensure that historical injustices actually inform our path forward? Your engagement, your critical thinking, they're essential for shaping the answers to these really complex challenges.
You know, the debates we covered today, particularly around the Mirren nomination and those powerful commemorations, like the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, they raise an important question, I think, for all of us. In a society that feels increasingly polarized, how do we honor that call to seek common ground? How do we, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously urged, discover the element of good in our enemy? This isn't just a political challenge, is it? It's really a societal one for every American to consider as we move forward together.
Well said. We hope this deep dive into congressional activity has given you a clear picture of the issues at play and maybe inspired you to look a bit closer. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.